Welcome back to In Ohio Country. Today, Big Dan Wilson alongside of Ken Holmes, Marketing Manager from Apple Farm Service, one of our fine sponsors here on In Ohio Country today. And it's time now to take a moment for safety. We're talking about rotary cutters, and there's a lot of things our farmers need to know, and commercial businesses, when it comes to being safe with one of these pieces of equipment.
Yeah, that's true. If you're a farmer, you might hear the segment and say, I've done rotary cutting every year for the last 30, 40 years, what new to know. But it's always good to have a little reminder, and maybe those that are buying a rotary cutter for the first time. Rotary cutters, they are an extremely dangerous machine, and so it's just good to take a moment for safety to learn a little bit more about things, do's and don'ts on your rotary cutter.
Well, before we get started, one of the things you need to do is maintenance, and Apple Farm Service can help you in making sure your rotary cutters are maintained. Let's talk about some of the services you provide for our rotary cutter owners out there.
Sure. Yeah, I guess something to know when you're looking at buying a rotary cutter. If you've never owned one before, there's a couple things to look for, and there's a couple things on maintenance to know as well. Of course, if you're going to buy it from a local dealership like Apple Farm Service, that's a farm implement dealership, we're going to take our time to go through and make sure everything is right on it, and the salesman who delivers it to your door should explain some of the safety aspects on it, especially if you've never owned one before. So some things as far as maintenance is always make sure that your gearbox is full. A lot of times when these ship, just like the ones behind a ship, they don't put oil in the gearbox. Your local dealership should fill it up with oil on the first time. Always check your oil, because if you don't, it's just like any other gearbox. It's going to get hot, it's going to start grinding, it's not going to work out for you. Another thing to know is a lot of these gearboxes, especially all the ones that we carry, it has a leaking, like a valve nut on it. And the purpose of that is to make sure that when that oil gets hot, and if there's pressure in that gearbox, that it releases enough pressure to make sure that your gearbox doesn't get too hot, or if it doesn't explode. So make sure that that nut always is able to breathe. If you can just flip it over a little bit. If a little bit of oil comes out, then you know that it's working. It's probably the easiest way to do it. But it also means that if you're transporting it, and it's on its side or at an angle, it might leak some oil. So always check your oil. Another very important thing to do maintenance-wise is to make sure that your blades are sharp. It seems kind of simple.
Right.
It's silly to say that of course you're going to sharpen your blades, but you might get lazy and just kind of forget to do it. When you think about it, if you don't sharpen your blades turning more into a bat. So if you hit any objects, it's hitting it with more of a chance it's going to throw it rather than maybe cut through it. If it's something like a tin can, aluminum can, or something that could cut, it's just going to it's going to take more horsepower too to cut when it hits something thicker, which is going to, in turn, more stress on your gearbox, more stress on your PTO, more stress on your engine. And another big thing to know about if you're buying a rotary cutter, or if maybe you have one but you've never checked, if you maybe bought one used, is know if your rotary cutter has a shear bolt on the PTO. It's very important to know. If you buy a rotary cutter from Apple Farm Service, all the brands that we carry has shear bolts. But if you're buying a lower end rotary cutter, if you're buying one from a big box store, there's a good chance it might not have a shear bolt. And what that means is if it has a shear bolt, if you hit a rock, something that's going to stop the blades, it's going to break that shear bolt before it messes up your gearbox. But if you don't have one, well, it's going to hit that rock, and it's either going to jam up your engine on your tractor and shut it off and have a hard stop, which isn't good for it, or it could eat up the gearbox, and you don't want to replace the gearbox. I think farmers out there, you've all had to replace gearboxes before. It's the most expensive thing on a rotary cutter. If you can have it last for more seasons just by taking care of it, that's better. So there are some basic maintenance that you should know about your rotary cutter.
Maintenance and safety, that's what it's all about. Safety prevention. Whenever you're operating any piece of machinery, you can always contact our friends here at Apple Farm Service, learn more about how to maintain your rotary cutters and your equipment in general so that you can be safe on the farm. For more information about rotary cutters and about safety tips like this, it's always good to go to your website, right?
Yeah, you can always go to applefarmservice.com. In fact, there's a news article out there now about rotary cutter safety on our website. So just go to applefarmservice.com and click on the news tab. You can learn a little bit about rotary cutter safety, especially if you're going out for the first time, maybe with your new tractor. Learn a little bit more. applefarmservice.com.
And if you're going out with that new tractor, why not a new rotary cutter? Just contact our friends at Apple Farm Service. That's Take a Moment for Safety. And we'll be back with more in Ohio Country Today right after this.